Hello everyone, and welcome to Shell Point Today for Thursday, April 9th. I'm Dan Filgreen. Next Wednesday is Holocaust Remembrance Day. In observance, there will be an outing to the Holocaust Museum to see a compelling exhibit next week. And Beth Chandley will give us a preview on today's show. Plus, we will visit a survivor of the Holocaust who has written a book about his 2-year ordeal of hiding from the Nazis. But first, we want to remind you that tomorrow there will be a trip to Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge for a lecture by author Jerry Lorenz. He will present information about the roseate spoonbills, including the birds' habits and where they live. Time will also be allowed to browse the visitor center exhibits and the bookstore. There will be a stop for ice cream on your own at Pinocchio's on Sanibel Island. The cost for the trip is $8, with court pickups beginning at 11:45 a.m. The approximate return time will be 4 p.m. Also in the morning, don't forget about the open-air marketplace on the island in the administration courtyard. It's the opportunity to purchase great products such as local honey, fresh produce, pastries, jewelry gifts, and more from the local vendors. The markets are held from 8:30 to 11:30 a.m. every Friday, weather permitting. And speaking of Fridays, Friday the 17th will be the time for the Holocaust Museum trip in Naples. In observance of Holocaust Remembrance Day next week, this outing will focus on an exhibit that is a first-hand account of medical officers who brought order to chaos in the closing days of World War II by stabilizing and restoring the health of the civilian population. For more on the museum trip, here is Bev Chandley.
Hi, I'm Bev Chandley, and I'm here today with you on Shell Point TV to tell you about an upcoming field trip that we have. Many of you know that I do plan the field trips, the off-site activities for all you residents here at Shell Point, and we go a lot of interesting places. And we are going to another interesting place later in the month of April. We're going to go visit the Southwest Florida Holocaust Museum. They have a special exhibit down there this month. It's an exhibit of the artifacts of Dr. Price Duff. He was a physician back during the time, and he was sent to Yale for special training so that he could help restore the civilian health after the Holocaust. It's a fascinating story, and I hope you'll sign up. There's still room on that trip, and join us for that trip down to the Southwest Florida Holocaust Museum. And now here's a little clip from the museum itself to give you a little bit more insight as to what you can expect.
The Dearest Pauline, a World War II healer writes home, is a new exhibition that the Holocaust Museum is introducing starting February 1st, and it tells the story of the Civil Affairs Medical Division through the eyes of Dr. Price Duff, who was one of the lead physicians in this unit that was trained to go into Europe and take care of the civilian population as the Nazis were retreating, but ended up also really dealing with the Holocaust survivors in many of the camps in Germany and Austria.
I was frankly shocked just at the sheer number of letters, objects, things like that. It was probably one of the most complete collections from that time period I've ever seen.
Within this particular collection, there are several letters that Dr. Duff wrote home to his wife and daughters. There will be photographs and items from not only his service in Europe, but also his life before going to Europe in the war and coming back and reestablishing his practice in Tennessee.
Well, I'd say the most unique three-dimensional object, something more than a letter itself, you'd be looking actually at the Carl Zeiss microscope. Zeiss microscopes at the time, and to extent this day, are considered some of the finest optical instruments produced, be it a microscope, a camera lens, things like that. Now, when it comes to a two-dimensional, so we're looking at his letters, I'd say the most unique piece would be actually his letter. There's two letters. They describe his first encounter with forced labor relating to the Nazi regime, where he's in France and he actually worked with and on Soviet and Polish forced laborers. And then a later one looking at the time of liberation for major camps such as Buchenwald.
Well, part of Dr. Duff's family, his daughter and one of his granddaughters are seasonal to the area, and they brought this opportunity to us to be able to tell this story here at our little museum. And the tagline of our museum is making history personal. We want everyone who visits this museum in some way to be able to make a personal connection to what they see on the walls or in the cases or a story that they hear. And so the opportunity to tell the story of Dr. Duff as it coincides with the liberation of the concentration camps at the end of World War II was just a perfect fit for what we do here.
Remembering history is sometimes very painful, but it's also very important so we as humans can learn from our mistakes. So I hope that you'll join us for the April 17th trip to the Southwest Holocaust Museum. Also, a very special attribute to this trip is the fact that Dr. Price Duff's own granddaughter will be our tour guide that day. Well, thank you for listening, and if you're interested in signing up to go on that trip, just call the Island Service Desk at 454-2282.
One Shell Point couple who have been heavily involved with the Holocaust Museum is Benno and Carla Benninga of Rosemont. When the Nazis invaded the Netherlands, their two families had to find hiding places, and they didn't emerge for more than 2 years. Benno wrote a book about his ordeal called In Hiding. Here now is the story of Benno and Carla Benninga.
I was born in a small town in the Netherlands called Leeuwarden, capital of the province of Friesland. Friesland is a dairy province. The Holstein cows come from there, the white and black cows. That's what it's known for. And of course the dairy industry, although my father had a margarine factory. And people ask me, how come in the dairy country you make margarine? But in those days, the people exported the butter and ate the margarine.
I was born in The Hague, which is the seat of government in Holland.
Our mothers were cousins. And I knew Carla when she was a little girl, and I told her then, just grow up as fast as you can so we can get married. In 1940, May 10, the Germans invaded, and the first year and a half or so, they left us alone. But then all hell broke loose, and all the regulations came that we weren't allowed to do this and that. People had been picked up and were sent to concentration camps. So that's when my parents decided to go into hiding, which was very, very difficult. My father had 100 people working for him, and there wasn't one who offered to help us until my mother's seamstress came to us and put the key on the table. And when my mother said, what is that? She said, if it gets too hot for you, you come and stay with us. And they lived with 2 children in a small flat in Amsterdam, and they took us in too. But we could not stay there because the son had to go to work to Germany, and when they would come to pick him up, they would find us. So then we had to find another place, and that was under the smoke of Amsterdam in a small town. And these people had no money, but they figured the war is going to be over in a few months. So for a sum of money, they offered to take us in. Very small house, and we were in the attic most of the time. Unless she was in a good mood, we were allowed to sit in the living room. The woman started to abuse us terribly, physically and mentally. I read some books when she would allow us. We were playing some cards once in a while until she forbade that. We had a radio, and we would listen to the Allied radio from London, the Dutch radio, free Dutch, when she would let us, you know. But other than that, the local papers were all German, of course. We could not venture out, it was too dangerous. Even the neighbors weren't supposed to know that we were there, although the woman shouted and screamed. So after the war, we found out that the whole village knew that we were there. And I'm telling you, I'm so unbelievably grateful for that whole village that they never told the Germans about us. I still don't understand how I survived those 2 years. Our God sent was the minister who lived there. He visited us and he took my mother and sister in with them in the house next to the church. And then the last few weeks my father and I were there too, and until we were liberated.
November 41, the Germans came to the house. We all had to move to Amsterdam they wanted to have every Jew that was there in Amsterdam was easy target. We were allowed to take, I believe, our beds and our clothes, and that was about it. So we went into hiding, except unlike Benno, we all went different places. I was the first one picked up, which I considered lucky. And then they came for my parents, left my sister. The fact that my parents left my 13-year-old sister, not really knowing whether people would come, but they did. So none of us knew where the other one was. I was 15 years old, and I had to have an optimistic view or I wouldn't be able to make it. My sister actually wasn't that far away, but I didn't know it. But finally I found out and was able to go see her. And about my parents, I didn't know anything. They found out that my parents were there and they picked them up, taken to a concentration camp in Holland by the name of Westerbork, which was basically a holding camp. They never killed anybody, but the trains to Germany went every Tuesday. But my parents were there afterwards at the time that the trains didn't run anymore. So they survived. I was able to get books to study. I think I was a year away from high school graduation. Went to take a typing course, very first thing I did when I was free. And then I found a job with the American forces. They had a headquarters in that town, and I spoke English, and I could type. So they gave me a job, and then when I went to see my parents, they gave me some sort of a American Army jacket and some papers, and it took us, I think, 4 or 5 days to do 200 miles, because all the bridges were out. There was 3 bridges in Holland that you have to cross normally on a bridge, but they were down. It was a happy ending. There weren't very many people in Holland that survived as a whole family. In our family, we were the only ones. All the others were either gone or they had the family member missing.
My father lost all his brothers and sisters with their families. My grandfather was killed in Auschwitz. It's been a long time, and yet we still think a lot about that time, which sort of influenced part of our life.
We both went to the university.
Yeah, we both went to university, and her mother invited me from time to time for dinner. So I figured I should reciprocate. So I thought, well, I'll invite one of the daughters to the movie. And from then on, we dated. We were married in 1950. A week or so after my final exam, we boarded the New Amsterdam and we came to America on the boat. America was the country that liberated us, and we were in awe of this fantastic country. And I wrote all the margarine companies in America, and the one company in Cincinnati accepted me. We were written up in the papers and all that, and we were invited by people. And I had to give a talk to the local accountants branch about the economic situation in Holland. I still don't know how I did it.
And what was it?
New York.
The hot dogs. And they said, would you like a hot dog? I said, I don't eat dogs, you know. I mean, you'd think you just never would think of.
Our daughter was born in 1952. Her name was Irene. And our son, Ron, was born in 55. The big shock of our life is when our daughter in 1971 went to Europe. They rented a little cottage. Gas heater was vented in instead of out. Our daughter, who was 19, died of carbon monoxide. You never get over it, obviously, but we were able to live. I was asked by Edison College, they have every year Holocaust Remembrance Week. And I talked to the students there, sometimes as many as 300, and they are very interested and ask a lot of good questions. And also at the Holocaust Museum in Naples,
Yeah,
and so has Carla.
Yeah. I believe it was an 8th grade class, and I told them, you know, when this happened, I was exactly your age. When you're 15, 16, 17, that's when you grow up. So I had to make lots of decisions on my own, and they weren't used to, and my sister, same thing, that we were really grown up, having gone through all this.
It is so important that the story gets told, because pretty soon there won't be any survivors anymore.
Holland had, I believe, 140,000 Jews before the war, and only about 30,000 survived.
I still don't understand how I survived those 2 years in that condition. It's a miracle.
And now it's time to cover all of today's happenings, menus, and Village Church connections.
Hello and welcome to the Happening segment of ShellPoint TV. I'm Caitlin Vanskoy and this is Bev Chandley, and we're going to let you know all the activities happening here at ShellPoint today. We're going to start bright and early with Bend, Breathe, and Balance. That's a Health Connections class at 7:15 in the Health Club. At 8 a.m. we have Men's Golf Association meeting at the ShellPoint Golf Club. And also at 8 a.m. we have pickleball being played at the pickleball courts. Our last 8 a.m. activity is the round robin doubles tennis at the Woodlands tennis courts. Samba the card game will be played at 9 a.m. That'll be in the stable room of the Woodlands, and new players are always welcome to join. Shuffleboard will be at the shuffleboard courts at 9:15. And current events will be at 9:30 in the game room of the Woodlands. Also at 9:30, ladies match play tennis will be at the Woodlands tennis courts. The Paddlers Club will meet for their weekly outing at the kayak storage at 9:30. And at 9:45, we have introduction to beginning line dancing down in the health club. 10:15, we have basic line dancing in the health club. And also at 10:15, the poetry group will be meeting in the art studio. We have a special presentation, Learn to Spot and Avoid Fraud, that'll be in the Social Center at 10:15, and you do need to sign up for that. We also have solar observing at 10:15 in the Osprey Room. And our last morning activity will be the Suzy Q headed out to Rum Runners at 11 a.m., and you do need to sign up for that. Here's Bev for our afternoon lineup.
Thank you, Caitlin. At 12:45, it's time for Mahjong. That's played in the Library Lounge on the island. And we have a Health Connections class at 1:30, Aqua Pilates Stretch. That's at the LifeQuest Aquatic Center. At 2:45, it's another Health Connections class, Balance and Mobility Training Level 2, and that's in the Health Club. We're going to jump all the way to 4 o'clock where you'll find the seamstress in the Osprey Room for her weekly service. 4:30, we have Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in the Sable Room of the Woodlands. Now at 5:30, it's time for the singles table at the Crystal Dining Room. So if you're single and you want to meet up with some other single folks and have a nice evening, head down to the Crystal. At 6:30, we have Pinochle. That's played in the Library Lounge on the island. And at 7 o'clock, the Trailblazers Bible study will be in the game room of the Woodlands. And at 7:30, we have a Fine and Performing Arts Concert Series. Tonight, this is David Osborne Trio, Pianists to the Presidents. That'll be in the Village Church, and you do need to have a ticket for that event. We're happy to see you here today, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.
Menus for Thursday. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter is basil chicken with Alfredo pasta and steamed broccoli. The dinner special is the Crystal Carving Board for $13.95, and the soup of the day is beef rice. In the Island Cafe for lunch, the special is a half of a Cuban sandwich with a cup of soup for $7.25. The dinner special is Hawaiian fish with rice pilaf and broccoli for $8.25. Dinner specials in the Palm Grill are ribeye for $19.95 or red snapper for $17.95. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Hi, welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm Andy Hawkins, the senior pastor of the Village Church, and I'm here with one of my colleagues, David Pavey. And David, we've been sharing ministry together for the last couple of years, but we've also learned recently that one of our dear colleagues, Glenda Stephenson, who has served the church for more than 7 years, is leaving our employ and on to other things. And certainly we're saddened about that because Glenda has a great deal of contribution and competence that she has shared with our fellowship in many different dimensions. And I know that she's affected your ministries, the things that you've been involved with, and she's certainly affected mine. So tell us a little bit about how Glenda has supported you and your ministries and the things that you've touched.
Glenda has been my immediate supervisor in several of the ministries that I've been asked to undertake while here. And one of those is the Alpha course. She's always been a resource. She's known the history of how this has gone. And so she's been a behind-the-scenes advisor for me and a great encouragement there. It gives me a sense of accountability for the way I do the work and how it goes. And we're always excited to see the evaluations that come in at the end of the time. Then I've been involved in the missions committee with Glenda, another area of responsibility that she oversees, and several others that I don't need to mention here perhaps. Also, she's encouraged me in the area of pastoral care for people who are shut in, people who are in the pavilion, sometimes in the hospital. And so we've worked pretty closely together, and she's been a real encourager. I think that's one of her gifts.
Absolutely. And of course, she's been our church administrator, and the things that fit under that broad administrative category are crucial to the operations side of the church. And so she's cared for all of those things that I know nothing about. You might know something about, but probably not. Things like human resources, benefits, taxes, managing the giving and the contribution side of things, and so the budget, finance area, all those kinds of things require somebody pretty special in terms of their competence and the things that they need to be up to date on, because some of those things change so quickly. And I can tell you, I am overwhelmed by thinking of the kinds of things that she has cared for, that not only can I not care for them, I don't want to care for them in my pastoral role, and she's done a marvelous job in caring for that broad range of things.
Right, and then she had a big hand in Refresh and Renew.
Oh, that's right.
Massive, massive undertaking.
Absolutely. Thankfully, we're most of the way through Refresh and Renew. Just have a few loose ends to tie. Otherwise, I think I would be, I'd be really upset about it.
So I think we ought to have a party for her.
And we will. I'm glad you brought that up.
Do you have a date?
We do have a date. We are going to honor Glenda on Wednesday evening, April 15 at 7:15 p.m. in the church auditorium.
Just for church people?
No, it's for everybody. I'm sure that Glenda has not only touched church people, but she's obviously touched people all across Shell Point. All the residents certainly should be invited to come and pay their tributes to her. Yeah. And it'll be an opportunity for some ministry leaders to express their appreciation for her on that occasion, and especially to enjoy some refreshments and some fellowship, and also just to have a personal opportunity to see Glenda and express appreciation to her I know it's going to be maybe an evening filled with some tears, but that's what these things are like.
Absolutely.
As we do recognize people that have been so very valuable to us and good friends at the same time.
I think she's been here for 7 years, so it's quite a contribution.
That's absolutely
And
the case.
so worthy of great honor. So we'll look forward to that then.
We will. That's Wednesday, April 15, so it's tax day, basically.
Well, that's an easy way to remember it.
It's an easy way to remember it. She's the finance person in our staff, but so it's tax day, April 15, 7:15. In the church auditorium, and it's open to everyone. We actually are doing this in lieu of our normal Wednesday evening service, and so it's all going to be focused on this reception to honor Glenda Stephenson.
Good.
So we hope that you'll join us for that occasion. We're looking forward to having that opportunity, even though we're sad to have her leaving us. And we hope that you'll join, no matter what your connection might be to the Village Church, simply to say goodbye and thank you to Glenda Stephenson. God bless you.
Thanks for joining us on Shell Point today. On tomorrow's show, Julie Boyd will give us some last-minute tax tips before you put those returns in the mail. Also, we'll recap the highlights from this week. Until then, I'm Dan Filgreen, and from all of us here at Shell Point TV, we hope you have a wonderful day, and we will see you back here tomorrow.